It is very special to be able to honor, celebrate, rejoice with our mothers, with not just our mums, but also the ladies in our lives who have impacted us, who have spoken into us, who have encouraged us and walked with us. Thank you for all that you have done, for all that you do. I'm not sure if you know the history of Mother's Day, but it was about 150 years ago. There's a lady by the name of Anna Jarvis who wanted to work in her community and help the mums in her community encourage good health. And so she rallied the mums around her, and they would spend time with the other mums in the community trying to help them encourage good health practices amongst their community. And Anna Jarvis had a daughter, and her daughter's name was Anna. Now, when Anna Senior passed away, Anna Junior went, I really want to honor what my mum did, because she did so much work in our community and she was so incredible. And so she started campaigning for a day to honor her mum, and then she thought, no, let's just make it all mums. And so Anna Junior started campaigning in her local community, and then she went to her state, and she ended up talking to the President of the United States, talking to legislators, senators, all these people to get this day where they can celebrate and honor mums. And in 1914, President Woodrow Wilson in the United States brought in a day, second Sunday of May, where the nation would be encouraged to honor and remember and celebrate the mums in their community. It started, it went well, it kicked off, everyone was doing it, and then all of a sudden the florist went, hey, we could give mums flowers. And then the chocolatiers went, maybe we could give some chocolates as well. And so they started selling their things on Mother's Day. And soon there was a whole commercial enterprise built around, an industry built around Mother's Day. And Anna Jarvis Jr., who had campaigned so hard to get this day to recognize mums, was now going, this wasn't the idea. And so she actually started campaigning against Mother's Day to stop the commercialization of it, to stop all this stuff, because it wasn't about gifts. It was always about just honoring our mums for who they are, for what they do, and celebrating them. And that's what we want to do today. That's what we want to do this weekend as you go tomorrow and spend time perhaps with your mum, perhaps with the mother of your children, perhaps remembering your mum in some way. But the whole concept of honoring our mums didn't just start 150 years ago. It actually started a long way before that. If you go back into the Bible, what's the first text you can think of that talks about honoring our mothers? Any thoughts? Ten Commandments, I heard someone say. Does anyone know what commandment is the one about honoring your parents? Anyone know what number? 5th, yes. The 4th commandment is about the Sabbath. 5th commandment is about our parents. And the word that God used when he gave this to the nation of Israel, the word for honor he used was kabad. Now, this is a Hebrew word, and it literally means heavy. It actually means heavy. So you remember the story of Eli? Eli's sitting on his stool, and he's waiting for news of the fight that was happening with the Philistines and the Israelites, and he hears that they lost, and he hears his sons died in the battle, and then he hears that the ark of God was taken, and he falls over, and he actually breaks his neck. Horrible story. But it says he fell over and broke his neck because he was kabad. He was heavy. And as a result of that, when he fell, he died. But the concept of heavy is around weightiness. That, if you think they bring in the heavies, have you heard that saying? Bring the people that have some authority, some power, who can make stuff happen. Someone is heavy with authority, the weight of authority sits on you. That's kind of where this idea comes from. And so when God says to honor your mother, he's saying give great weight to what she does. Understand that the weight that she carries is one of responsibility. And as a result of that, our response to that is to honor her in some way. And it's really, to honor someone, it's really an outward expression of something that you decide internally. If you want to honor somebody, you first will have to respect them and appreciate them. And then out of that comes this ability to actually honor them in your life. But practically, what does it actually look like to honor, or how do we honor our mothers? How do we do this in a way that is, because as followers of Jesus, we want to obey his word. And his word says to honor our parents, honor our mothers. So how do we actually do that practically? What does that look like? And as you think about it, it can be tricky because you may be thinking, well, my mum wasn't actually honorable. My mum was hard to honor, and she would be hard to honor because of the things that she did. And that's real. And so what do you do with that? And for others of you, you think honoring my mum is easy because she is amazing. She's always there. She's been supportive. She's been encouraging. And I wouldn't be the person I am today without her. And you might sit somewhere in the middle of those two. So what does it look like to honor our mums? I want to suggest that there are three ways we can do this. And the first one is to accept that she is your mother. That without her, you would not be here. Now, I know that seems pretty simple and, the biology is pretty obvious, but God placed you in that position. God was the one who gave you to your mother. He formed you in her womb, and he knit you together, and he had that plan, and that is where you have come from. So first of all, I think we need to really accept the fact that this was God's plan. This is what he did. Yeah, maybe you weren't comfortable with it. Maybe it was something you had to get used to. Maybe the choice that God gave your mum in bringing you up, maybe she took that choice and she worked with it and she made it the best she could. Maybe she made some mistakes and you've forgiven her for them. Maybe she made some mistakes and you're still working on that. But accepting the fact that God was the one who put your family together is, I think, the first step that we can take. Accepting that God did this. And I think if you look at Jesus' life, we don't know a lot about his childhood. What we do know is that when he was 12 years old, the family went to Jerusalem, and there must have been a big bunch of them because they left Jerusalem to go back home, and they were walking along and they went, hang on, we're missing someone. Who are we missing? Mary goes, where's Jesus? And so they go back to Jerusalem, they hunt for him, they find him in the temple, and he was in his father's house, as he said. But they take him home, and what we're told after that is that it says that Jesus was obedient to his parents. He followed them, he grew in favor and stature with both God and with men. And so even as a 12-year-old, Jesus was trying to honor his mum by obeying her. And then think a little bit further down his life, when he was 30, his first miracle, the first thing that Jesus does to kind of reveal that God is working through him is at this wedding. The wine runs out. His mum says, Jesus, can you do something about this? And he's like, what? Like, it's not my time, is what he said. But his mum seems to ignore that and just says to the servants, just do whatever he tells you to do. Just listen to him and do stuff. And you kind of get this picture that Jesus kind of boxed into a corner. But he obeyed his mum. And his first miracle happened as a result of him honoring his mum. And it flowed out into the rest of this community and impacted all those people who were at that wedding. And it also signaled the beginning of his ministry. So we can begin to honor our parents by first accepting that God's placed them in our lives. He did that. That was his plan. And so God does stuff for his reasons. Sometimes we don't understand them, but you can trust that he is good. Once we've accepted that God's done this, we can start thinking about what are the things that my mum has done? What is involved in bringing a human into the world? Oh my goodness me. It's brutal. I have one brother. My brother's 3 years older than me. And my mum was really sick with him. And they thought we probably shouldn't have one. We probably need them to play together. We need someone to play with. So they had a second child. And from the first day of when mum found out she was pregnant to actually, I think a few days after I was born, she was sick every single day. There was no morning sickness in the first trimester. She just had the whole time. She weighed less at the end of her pregnancy than she did at the beginning. I put my mum through a terrible pregnancy. And then I was born, and then it just got better. My teenage years and all that stuff. Actually, now mum and dad actually live with us, so she's probably still trying to, fix things and make me right. But the reality is, what mothers do to bring a child into the world is incredible. But it's not just that, it's also the loving, the caring, the looking after, the raising. There's a story of this husband who came home from work. He pulled into the driveway and he saw his wife's car was there and the door was open. He thought, oh, that's strange. So he went and had a look and, oh, there's no one in there. So he turned and was going to walk into the house and saw the front door was open. And he kind of looked around and then he saw one of his kids in the front yard digging up the garden with a spoon, eating one of the flowers. He's like, oh man, what's going on? And so he walked in the front door and he saw like a mound of wrappers on the couch. And he looked in and his 3-year-old was there in like a snack coma, staring at a screen, glazed eyes. He's like, man, what has happened? And so he's starting to think maybe something's happened to his wife. Like, what's gone wrong? And so he walks in, he walks past the kitchen, he has a brief look inside, and there's like a new flooring of Cheerios. There's more cereal in the corner. The sink is full of dishes. He's going, man, this is so unusual. Like, this is not normal. He makes his way up the steps and he can see a little bit of the kid's bedroom, but none of the floor. He walks past and he's really worried. And he's heading towards the bedroom. He walks past the bathroom and there's a trickle of water coming out from underneath the bathroom door. He's like, we'll have to deal with that later. I'm not sure what's going on there. He passes the other kid's bedroom and he can see his 4-year-old is painting the cat with jam. He's like, oh, what is going on? Now he thinks he's not sure what has happened. He runs into the bedroom. He sees his wife in her pajamas, sitting in bed reading a book. And he goes, what's going on? What's happened? He looks up and smiles, hey, honey, how's your day? He's like, my day? What happened here? And still smiling, she looks at him and says, you know how when you get home, you ask me what I've done all day? I said, yes. He said, well, today I didn't do it. I think that summarizes motherhood. There's all these things that get done. Some of it you don't see, Some of it we don't notice. But mums, you are the ones who are doing all this work. And your mum probably did that for you as well. And so part of honoring our mums is also to acknowledge the things that they've done for us, the things that they do. And it's also acknowledging that they too, despite whatever experience you might have had, they too are made in the image of God. And if your experience has been one where you have actually been able to see God in your mother, where you've been able to witness what God's love looks like through her, then what you have experienced is actually seeing the image of God, because she has passed that on to you. She has reflected that in what she's done, in the countless hours that she has put into your life. And so we accept our mums. We acknowledge all that they have done. And then we affirm them. And we say, thank you. Thank you for what you have done. Thank you for the way that you have cared for me, the way that you have loved me. Thank you for raising me. Thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for challenging me, for instructing me, for feeding me countless meals. And when we affirm them, either in person or if you no longer have that chance, you can affirm them by the way that you live and the legacy that you intend to live out that she passed on to you. I think when you look at Jesus' life, yes, we have this picture of him as a 12-year-old and then as a 30-year-old beginning his ministry. But the very final thing that Jesus did before he passed away, before he died on that cross, I think shows us that he honored his mum. Because he was there on the cross and he looks down and the Bible tells us that he saw his mum. And next to his mum was one of his followers, John. And we get this picture through reading the Gospels that Jesus and John had gotten really close. And so Jesus, knowing what is coming, knowing what the future will hold, he says to his mum, "Mum, here's your son." And he says to John, "Here's your mother." As he's dying on the cross, taking the weight of the world upon him, he still looks out for his mum. And he still wants to care for her. He still wants to honor her by ensuring that she is looked after, that she is loved, that there is somebody there to support her as he won't be in the future. And so if you want to know what honor looks like, I think Jesus shows it in his life. We only get little snippets, but he does it in such a way that he challenges us to also do the same. He kept that fifth commandment. He obeyed his mum. He honored her. He loved her. He cared for her. And I'm challenged to do the same in my life. And as we celebrate you mums, and as you celebrate your mum this weekend, my prayer is that you can, accept who she is, accept that God's placed her in her life, acknowledge all the things that she has done for you, but also take the steps to actually affirm her in that. To say those words and say, thank you for what you've done. Thank you for revealing God to me. Thank you for revealing Jesus in your life. Thank you for bringing me to a knowledge of him. Thank you for the way you've cared for me, you've grown me. I wouldn't be who I am today if it were not for you and what God has done through you. About 15, 20 years after Father's Day was initiated, Franklin Roosevelt, it became the practice, it became the practice that the president would make a speech for Mother's Day. And so Franklin Roosevelt was preparing his speech, and we actually have a copy of the script before it was spoken. And I love what he says because I think it captures what Mother's Day is actually all about. So he talks about Mother's Day in the first paragraph, but then he says, it's not my intention this year to issue a special proclamation on the subject, as I believe that the attention of the American people will be so devoted to the cause of that day that formal action on the part of the chief executive is unnecessary. I prefer to think that the tributes which will be paid to mothers will come simply and spontaneously from our hearts. Yeah, it's not about gifts, but they can convey meaning. It's not about the chocolates, but they can be appreciated. It's more about the time and the words and the way that you can affirm your mother for what she's done, for who she is, and for the blessing that she's been to your life. So I want to encourage you. If you are visiting your mum this weekend and you have that privilege, to make the most of that time. Not just this weekend, but every chance you get. But remember that by doing so, you are being a faithful follower of Jesus. You're obeying what God's called us to do. And there is a real blessing that comes from that. Fifth commandment is the only one that comes with a promise. Honor your mother and your father so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. And I've reflected on that, and I wonder if that's part of the plan that God has, that he wants us to enjoy the time with our mums. And if our days are long, and our parents' days are long as well, then we get a lot of time together to acknowledge them, to affirm them, and to just enjoy the beauty of family that God's created. So mums, thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you've done for us. Thank you for the way you've grown us and shaped us. And we pray that this weekend, especially, that you are blessed and that you know that you are loved by us, by your family, but more importantly, you are loved by God because you are made in his image. So happy Mother's Day.